Hall on Friday, September 13th. There are just a few seats left, and I'll have more confidence if it sells out. Head to crooked.com/events to get tickets. I'm very excited about that show. Alyssa, you'll be there.
I will be there front row, so I can tell you look like a model.
That's all I need. That's all I need in this world. All right, let's get to the news about our lawless president. Here is what the Washington Post reported on Tuesday night. He has directed aides to fast-track billions of dollars worth of construction contracts, aggressively seize private land, and disregard environmental rules, according to current and former officials involved with the project. When aides have suggested that some orders are illegal or unworkable, Trump has suggested he would pardon the officials if they would just go ahead, aides said. He has waved off worries about contracting procedures and the use of eminent domain, saying, "Take the land," according to officials who attended the meetings. The piece goes on, "Don't worry, I'll pardon you," he has told officials in meetings about the wall. He said people expected him to build a wall, and it had to be done by the election, one former official said. Trump denied this immediately, claiming that the Washington Post is out to get him. But even inside of this story, aides refused to deny that Trump discussed pardons outright, claiming Trump was joking. Trump, also not one for subtlety, apparently also is insisting that the wall be spiked and painted black, even though painting the wall black will cost so much money that the wall will end up being 4 to 7 miles shorter. Alyssa, there is a lot to unpack here, so I want to start with the political pressure Trump is feeling, then talk about how he's paying for all this, and finally dive into the corrupt and criminal elements. So Trump has promised to build 500 miles of his wall before the election, but as of now, he has built no new fencing along the southern border, none. They've replaced some fencing. They've managed to do some construction to replace some fencing, but that's it. He seems to be panicking about this. A new Quinnipiac, doesn't matter, found that Trump's approval rating on immigration, his signature issue, is at 38%, with 59% disapproval. So Trump views this as essential to his reelection. We just went through a midterm fight in which Democrats produced a huge majority in the House despite immigration fear-mongering. Alyssa, what did you take away from this story in terms of Trump's immigration politics?
Someone's scared. Someone made one promise in 2016. I think the chant was, build that wall. And he has the one thing people wanted from him, he can't do, he hasn't done, and, he's like, that's it, Lovett. It comes down to this fucking wall. It comes down to a wall. He knows it, we know it, and there's no wall.
So you were part of an administration. I'm sorry, let me say it again. So you were in a job in the Obama administration that was very much about tracking projects like this. Of course, the Obama administration would not pursue a project like this, but you were in a job, one of the jobs of president and the people that work for a president is setting priorities for an administration and keeping things moving forward. One detail in the article I found striking is that Trump has been having regular meetings to assess the progress in the construction of the wall, which seemed like almost ordinary politics from Trump. How much of a failing is it for a White House to be so flat-footed on a signature issue like this?
Well, I mean, Lovett, can you imagine if after as many years as we were in the White House back in 2009, 2010, if we had done nothing on health care, if there were no discussions, if there was no progress, if there was no, Gang of Eight, whatever the group was called, and here he is now getting whooped, last fall in the midterms, and now he's cruising into, his reelection, and he hasn't done anything to deliver on the fear-mongering, race-baiting that he did. And, his core constituency, his core supporters, they want to see this fucking wall. They want to know. He scared the shit out of everyone. He said a caravan was coming. He said everyone was climbing over things, breaking through the country. He built this all up, and unlike with tariffs and everything else he does this with, he can't really walk it back because he created such mania. And so now he needs to, literally by hook or by crook, get something on this wall. But, Lovett, I don't know if you saw, I had to look at this a couple times, as I do with many Trump tweets. He put a video, it's his pin tweet right now, that has what looks like video of this completed black wall. And he says things like the wall is going up as fast as it can, but it's a lie. But he'll do anything to try to tell people he's actually making progress when there is absolutely no progress.
I'm sneezing. No, it's interesting. It does seem like he is caught between his two instincts. One is his understanding that he made a promise, and even though politics is barely functioning, even though he can say whatever he wants to his base, even though he'll be backed by a propaganda network, even though people are shouting "finish the wall" at his rallies, despite the fact that he has not really begun the wall, at least not built any new wall, that he can kind of get away with it by that he understands he actually has to do something, while at the same time recognizing that if he can't do anything, he still is free to lie about it, that he can just simply claim the wall is being built and have footage of construction and call it a victory just so that he has something to campaign on.
It's a real choose-your-own-adventure inside his head.
I feel like every choose-your-own-adventure in Trump's head ends with the bus going off the cliff and no one finding the Mona Lisa. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? I think it does.
It did to me. It was vivid.
All right. So Trump uses as let me move on to the thing. So one other facet of this is how he's paying for the wall. In July, the conservative majority in the Supreme Court affirmed Trump's ability to take $2.5 billion from the Pentagon and put it towards wall construction, despite Congress's explicit refusal to devote money to this project, after Trump repeatedly walked away from immigration deals with Democrats and Republicans that would have funded the wall. Now we learn that for the second time in a year, Trump has taken funding from FEMA to pay for his immigration policies. Last September, the administration took almost $10 million from FEMA and sent it to ICE. This week, the administration announced it was taking $271 million from FEMA, including $155 million from the agency's disaster relief fund, and directing those funds toward the border, including towards detention beds. This came in the midst of hurricane season. Hurricane Dorian was striking the U.S. Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, and Hurricane Dorian was striking the U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, and it's a storm that's currently intensifying as it heads toward Florida. Even as Puerto Rico was bracing for the storm, Trump was attacking Puerto Rico on Twitter. Puerto Rico was largely spared from the brunt of Dorian, but still not great. You know, we now have Trump. He claimed Mexico was going to pay for it. That's become a joke in and of itself, but he's taking money from FEMA. He's taking money from the Pentagon. We have Trump telling aides to take the land from American citizens through eminent domain, all to give his reelection a boost. Alyssa, how would you be telling Democratic candidates to talk about this, the way that he has decided to fund this pet project?
So this is very personal to me, because as White House Deputy Chief of Staff, I oversaw disasters. And one thing that I think that you need to make it vivid, and I think you have to drive it home. And one of the things, as it relates specifically to him taking the money from FEMA and Homeland Security, is that the costliest hurricanes that have hit the U.S. All happened in late August, September, or October, right? Katrina, Harvey, Maria, Sandy, Irma, Ike, and Wilma, right? Since 1980, the United States government has paid over $862 billion to hurricane recovery. The average cost about $21.6 billion per hurricane. So the question for everyone is, if most hurricanes hit the U.S., the costliest, the deadliest, hit the U.S. between September and early November, why is he moving money now? Like, this is the worst time. This is like when your parents give you $1,000 for food and books your first semester of college, and you, decide to go to an Indigo Girls concert in Amherst, Massachusetts, and use half that money. Like, you still got to pay for the food for the rest of the semester, which only means calling your parents or getting another job, but you got to find the money. And in this case, the parents are Congress.
Are you worried that analogy was too specific, or maybe not specific enough?
I mean, it's something that I was thinking about when the Indigo Girls came on the radio on my way here. And I was like, it's just like that. I mean, it's obviously not just like that, but you get my point.
So
he's bankrupt. This is nothing but robbing from Peter to pay Paul. And if there are things, Dorian right now is on track to make landfall in the U.S. as a Category 4. Many of the hurricanes that have had the damage that they've had were less than a Category 4. So he's just, it's all such fucking garbage.
So now I want to move on to, So let's talk about the other. This story to me was like there was something there was something about this Washington Post story that captured sort of every element of the threat Trump poses. It is focused on a cruel and inhumane immigration policy rooted in the animus that he has stoked in millions of people against immigrants. He is taking from other government priorities because he has no care for the functioning of the government whatsoever, and has been sort of abetted by the Supreme Court, abetted by Republicans in Congress who don't seem to care to hold him accountable. But there was also this final piece of it, which is what which is what the Washington Post reported on pardons that CNN has confirmed, others have confirmed, that basically says if aides have to break a few federal laws to get the wall done more quickly, it's not a big deal because he can just issue a pardon. Alyssa, what was your reaction when you saw this sort of pardon offer as part of his race to get the wall done?
I mean, on the one hand, not really surprised. I mean, I guess I would have thought he was, offering this out sooner, like he did with all the other people who have gone to jail because of him. But, for me, I guess I just remembered, my very first day in the White House when Barack Obama made it clear, literally said verbatim, you serve the people of the United States. And I think what's so clear in this West Wing specifically is that they serve one person who is mercurial to be kind, and it is not at all about the people or doing what's right or doing things the right way or adhering to anything. I don't know. It's just like, I mean, Lovett, what did you think? Were you surprised?
When I saw it come over the wires, as it were, I read it, and for a moment it just felt like another Trump story. And then I thought about it again, and I read it again, and I thought, wait a second. I know we're inured to a lot of Trump's worst abuses, and I know the immediate reaction, political, is, well, even if Democrats impeach Trump, the Senate won't do anything. Nobody will care. The immediate there's a kind of learned helplessness that when you see something like this, you already jump to the fact that you're aware that everyone's going to move on. But when I saw it, I didn't want to move on because it does to me feel like a real escalation. Trump has dangled pardons for Paul Manafort, for Michael Flynn, for Michael Cohen. Mueller documents Trump's abuse of the pardon power in the report. Dozens of references to how he has tried to use the pardon to cover up crime. Trump's also pardoned people like Joe Arpaio, Dinesh D'Souza, right-wing hardliners, and his lackeys who he just wanted to give a favor to, no deeper principle, no sense of kind of what the pardon power is meant to do, which is to bestow mercy for those who deserve it. But this, to me, is new. This is saying, break the law to help me win re-election, and I will pardon you, which is not far from saying federal laws do not apply if you are helping Donald Trump hold on to power. That if you are going, whether it's campaign finance laws, whether it's laws governing how you can build a wall along the southern border, whether it's laws around electioneering, whether it's laws about what Kellyanne Conway is allowed to say on the White House lawn, violating the Hatch Act by basically treating the White House as a campaign platform for her boss, that Donald Trump doesn't care about any of it. He doesn't care about any of it. The law does not matter. All that matters is his ego, his not being wounded by negative attacks or by being defeated in re-election. So to me, this was a kind of dangerous escalation.
Yeah. It's actually hard to imagine. Like, he's done so much, like you say, to make us numb to this. But I just, for a minute, think it's like, the other day was the anniversary of Barack Obama's scandal of wearing a tan suit. And I think about if any other president, if we had heard that Bill Clinton was offering out pardons for people to lie to do something, to lie to Ken Starr, like, I'll take care of you, perjure yourself. I just think that the world would have been on fire. Tom Brokaw would have been, having break-in special news at, 5 o'clock instead of 6. And now we're just like, we know it's terrible, but there's so much other bad shit he does that you're like, okay, I guess here's another thing.
Yeah, it is this sort of catch-22 in that despite the fact that we know that Trump's impeachable offenses, that Trump's misconduct, his abuse of office, his unprecedented viciousness, and all of it has become, in many ways, sort of the status quo ante of politics, that we can't treat it that way in the moment, despite the fact that in the back of our minds we fear that that's what will ultimately happen anyway. So it is the strategy, right? We are exhausted by the many different abuses of Donald Trump, but I do think this one, we have now seen a steady trickle of Democrats coming out for impeachment. But it is worth noting that right now there is a kind of brazenness to what Donald Trump is doing. He is floating, having the G7 take place at Doral. He is telling aides to break the law, to proactively inform them that he will pardon them if they break the law. An abuse of the pardon power that has been warned about since the founders were giving the president the pardon power, this unlimited power that everyone has recognized was ripe for abuse. So, we come back to this question, is it worth impeaching Donald Trump, or do we just simply have to repudiate him at the ballot box? But I do think it's also worth just pausing and saying, this is new, this is dangerous, this is an unprecedented move by Trump in a very tough category of abuses. And beyond that, it's about pressuring Democrats to take it as seriously as they should, to not buy into the kind of learned helplessness that we see in the media, that we see in the sort of political coverage.
Right. It's kind of like, if impeachment isn't for this, then what is it for?
Right. I mean, it's and that has been true. We could have said that. It's interesting. That sentence has been true for a long time. That was true of the abuses outlined by Mueller. But this, to me, is an even new level. The president is telling people that they can break the law with impunity to help him retain his office. That is an abuse of power at the core of checks and balances. That is why we have an impeachment power. We can't declare a vote of no confidence. We can't go up to Queen Elizabeth II and say, "Can you put the Parliament, in the fridge?" This is what we have, and it may not lead to removal in the Senate, but it's still the power that we have. He is so brazen at this moment because he doesn't believe there will be any mechanism to hold him accountable.
And we know that he is not nuanced, right? He's not slick. He's not. So what I think about is what has he done and said, in this vein that we don't know about? Like, what's he saying to people at the State Department about what we're doing in Syria or Yemen or Africa? Or, this is just the tip of the iceberg. That's what I think about when I hear this. It's like, if this is what we're hearing, then this is just the beginning. This is just the beginning of the cockeyed shit that he's doing from his very empty desk.
Yeah, Jeffrey Goldberg at The Atlantic interviewed Mattis, the former Secretary of Defense, and it's worth reading the interview, because what you feel is, first of all, you feel the imbalance between those who you feel the imbalance between those who don't give a shit about decorum, about civility, about mutual respect, about treating people fairly, who want to defend Trump, and people like Mattis, who is a complicated figure who does not deserve unalloyed praise, let's say, but who nonetheless you feel kind of bristling against his desire to remain quiet out of respect for the office of the presidency, who nonetheless does seem to want to speak out about what he saw behind the scenes. And there's a moment in this interview where Mattis basically says, "I feel as though I have a moral obligation to provide silence, but it won't last forever." And you do seem to you do see that there are people inside who have not yet told us enough about the truth of what they saw when they were working with this president.
And something that I think is interesting, that I always think is worth sort of shining a light on, Susan Rice and I a couple months ago did an event together. It was this big event, and one of the things that I asked her was, people like John Brennan and Jim Clapper, they are apolitical. These are not members of the security of this country who wanted to come out and make statements that make them appear political, but because they know what a menace, what a threat this president is to national security, they have felt the need to speak out. And I always think it's worth just saying this was not in their DNA. This wasn't something that they ever wanted to do. They served multiple presidents of different parties. And, but this is where we are. It's, everybody feels the need, like, see something, say something.
Yeah. Now, these are heavy topics, but before we move on, I did want to read one tweet from Trump about this question as to whether or not the G7 should meet at Trump Doral. Here it is. Quote, "No bedbugs at Doral. The radical left Democrats, upon hearing that the perfectly located for the next G7, Doral National, Miami, was under consideration for the next G7, spread the false and nasty rumor. Not nice. There has never been anything that has convinced me of the opposite of what it is claiming more than this tweet. Beginning a tweet, no bedbugs at Doral, is such an admission of bedbugs at Doral.
Like, do you think that Angela Merkel and President Macron just, like, tweet links to each other of his tweets? Like not sure if they should use the wide-eye emoji, the LOL emoji, or the crying emoji, but, like, this is the person they have to deal with. And you know what? There are a lot of reasons that it shouldn't be at Doral. One, it'll be during hurricane season. But also, it's a funny thing because as, again, part of my job, I oversaw things like the G7 summit and where we would host things and hosting foreign summits and everything. And you know that in our administration and several others, it never would have passed vet because of all the liens that it had against it.
I want everyone to know that I attempted a French accent of Macron and Merkel making fun of Trump Doral having bedbugs, but for your benefit, I did cut it. Alyssa, you speak French. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Merde.
All right, let's move on to 2020. We're headed to one debate night in September, Thursday, September 12th. 10 candidates will take the stage. They are Biden, Warren, Bernie, Booker, Mayor Pete, Castro, Kamala, Klobuchar, Beto, and Yang. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand of New York dropped out of the race yesterday following recent departures of other candidates, including John Hickenlooper and Seth Moulton. The field is narrowing. Alyssa, how do you feel about that?
I love Kirsten, and I think that she went out in a really elegant way and went out on top, and, her voice will still be very present in the election as we go forward, and she's going to be out there. She, for me, is someone who has always had the backs of women and made sure that they were believed and heard, and, she stuck her neck out for... She said what she felt when it came to Al Franken, and she never backed down despite the pressure. And, many of her colleagues now say, I regret it. I didn't do it. And so I just, I dig her. She stood up, and good for her, and we love her, and we hope to hear more from her. For the debate, for the bigger picture, I think it's really good that we're down to one debate stage. I don't know why, but I feel like if there had been two, somehow Warren and Biden wouldn't have ended up on the same stage again. And I just don't know how much more we can endure. And also, just watching them, you see the people who are sort of in the lower tier, who are really just sort of like doing the breaststroke, trying to get, a moment so that they can get more money, so they can make it to the next debate. And so I feel like the group that we'll be hearing from is pretty steady, and it will be substantive, I hope. Do you think it'll be substantive?
I hope so. I do think we may also be headed back to a double debate next time because a few people are so close. Steyer was close.
Right.
Tulsi Gabbard was close. So we may be back to a two-night debate. I ultimately think it is good that they're all on one stage. But at the same time, given how many people have been on each debate stage already, I also wasn't averse to there being kind of 6 and 5, just to have two more substantive debates just to mix it up. But I also think that, a lot of people are kind of pointing criticism at the DNC at this point that really isn't earned, given basically how, these thresholds, they were there for everybody to see. And
right.
We've seen candidates be able to surmount be able to surmount these thresholds from, people like Julian Castro, Mayor Pete, others who have managed to kind of fight their way into this category. So I don't know. I think it's ultimately good that we are guaranteed a debate with Biden and Warren on one stage, but I also think it would have been fine if we had a bunch more people. The only reason I was so for one debate night is because I didn't want to conflict with Lovett or Leave It. Yeah. So speaking of Biden and Warren being on the debate stage together, Biden released a healthcare ad that I wanted to play because I thought it captured something essential about his campaign and the debate we're having right now over healthcare.
I was sworn into the United States Senate next to a hospital bed. My wife and daughter had been killed in a car crash. And lying in that bed were my 2 surviving little boys. I couldn't imagine what it would have been like if we didn't have the health care they needed immediately. 40 years later, one of those little boys, my son Bo, was diagnosed with terminal cancer and given only months to live. I can't fathom what would have happened if the insurance companies had said for the last 6 months of his life, you're on your own. The fact of the matter is, healthcare is personal to me. Obamacare is personal to me. When I see the president try to tear it down and others propose to replace it and start over, that's personal to me too. We got to build on what we did because every American deserves affordable health care. I'm Joe Biden, and I approve this message.
Alyssa, what did you think of that ad?
So I thought it was really powerful. I saw it before I even had my coffee the other day. I thought it might have been more powerful without sort of like the veiled swipe at the end, at sort of Medicare for all. It's because the ad is so personal, because he talks about his family and his struggles, but he's really never used them sort of in this type of ad before. And, but no, it was really powerful. I just think that, I just probably wouldn't have done that at the end.
Yeah. The reason I wanted to play it is because to me, I was incredibly moved by his willingness to tell the story. And it's emotional to listen to. And you're reminded that this is somebody who has been sort of steeped in grief throughout his career, that has been, that the pain that he has had in his life has been, I think, part of why he has been able to retain a kind of ordinariness and ability to relate to people, because he has been through something so wrenching. His life in politics is bookended by these tragedies. And then, and you see that, and you're reminded too in that's part of his strength as a candidate that goes beyond just name recognition, that goes beyond electability, that goes to the affection people have for Joe Biden. And then it turns and it becomes about healthcare, and the critique of Trump is valid and good. The defense of Obamacare is good. And then it is used as to issue a kind of very small-minded attack on other Democrats' healthcare proposals that isn't very fair. And right. I thought it really did capture the kind of the promise of a Biden campaign, and also the weaknesses of a Biden campaign in one ad, that he would share this incredibly personal story in a way that was incredibly effective, and then have the message of the ad ultimately be an attack on a kind of healthcare plan that isn't particularly accurate, So that's why I wanted to share it, just because I do think of that there is that duality inside of it.
Well, and I think that for me too, part of my initial takeaway, it's like, look, we've all been through campaigns before. We've all watched them unfold on television. We've lived them in real life. And to me, he almost missed the point that he missed is that the thing that the other campaigns are saying is they fundamentally believe that healthcare is a human right? Like that's the through line. And I feel like that's where he jumped the shark at the end, because, I don't know. I thought that when I hear Sanders or Warren or anyone else talk about Medicare for all and how it's that we all deserve to be able to go to the hospital and, like the story that Kamala tells, not sit in the car with your kid in front of the emergency room knowing that when you walk in it's going to cost you $5,000 because of your deductible. So, yeah, I thought it was really powerful and moving, and I just really didn't like the last 45 seconds.
Yeah, and it also, to be pointed, I thought, what I thought the ad was going to be, it's this incredibly personal story, and it really could be about a larger argument about pain people are feeling, about what he wants to do as president, about the stakes of what's facing the country, and it doesn't do that. Two other races I wanted to touch on. One, Republican Senator Johnny Isakson of Georgia announced he will be retiring for health reasons. Republican Senator David Perdue of Georgia was already up for re-election. Now both of Georgia's Senate seats will be on the ballot. Stacey Abrams has again said she will not run for the Senate. Nonetheless, these are two pickup opportunities now for Democrats. The path to taking the Senate has widened a bit and has also now focused on Georgia a bit more. Alyssa, what do you think this means for Democrats in the fight for the Senate?
I think it means we have to have our act together. I mean, look, we have an opportunity. We have a state that's creeping bluer, right? Stacey Abrams showed us that, in the last election, Abrams got something like, I think it was 48.8%. And John Barrow, who is a white man, who was running for Secretary of State, got 48.7%. So it's showing that Democrats are bringing out people to for all kinds of candidates. And, I just think that there's a lot to be done. They have to find some good candidates who can keep sort of paving the path that Stacey Abrams specifically sort of blazed in the last cycle.
One other fact about this that I saw. Let me say it again. One other aspect of this too is the fact that both of these seats are up for the same time, and apparently the last time two Senate seats were up in a state at the same time and split, as in didn't both go to the same party, was apparently 1966, so more than 50 years ago. So it also does seem that the odds suggest that these seats will move together. The other facet is this is a special election in which if no candidate gets 50%, then it could go to a runoff. And so many have been noting that this introduces the possibility that the Senate could be determined in January by a runoff in Georgia. It is a terrifying possibility that gives me a knot in my stomach, and I wanted to share that with all of you.
Thanks for bringing us into your anxiety.
Before we go, one other race. This is about the North Carolina 9th. During the 2018 election, Democrats came extremely close to flipping North Carolina's 9th congressional district. It initially looked like Republican Mark Harris had beaten Democrat Dan McCready by 900 votes. It then came to light that Harris had hired a shady political operative who stole ballots. State officials called a new election, which will take place on September 10th. McCready and his new challenger, a Trump-loving state senator named Dan Bishop, are neck and neck in the polls. Trump will be going to North Carolina to hold a rally right before election night, so that gives you a sense of how important the Republicans view this race. To learn more about how the Republicans stole the original election, check out this month's Crooked Mini, Rigging North Carolina, led by Shaniqua McClendon, our political director, who did an incredible job. And do we have a call to action for North Carolina? Well, I can add it after, and then I'll just add that. Alyssa,
yeah,
thank you for joining today.
Lovett, thank you so much. I can't wait to be your biggest cheerleader at Radio City on
All right.
the 13th.
Do you think it's are we superstitious that this show's taking place on Friday the 13th? This is the first time I've acknowledged it.
I think it's nothing but good. New York City on Friday the 13th, please.
It'll be spooky good.
Spooky good.
Talk to you later, Alyssa.
Bye.
When we come back, when we come back, we'll be joined by Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley. Oh, now we should do the outro. Sorry. Now we're in the outro. Alyssa, it's always good to talk to you.
You too, Lovett.
That's it. That's the end of our. That's what we got for each other after all this.
No, I didn't know there was an outro. You caught me off guard.
I did. I caught myself off guard. I'm doing a lot of pods this week. All right. John and Tommy are both in Europe on a bicycle built for two, and I'm just.
You think
here.
I don't know this?
I'm recording everything. Yeah, I know.
I drove an hour to be here with you. Okay, on the Thursday before Labor Day. My love for you is real.
Wow. Thank you for doing that.
Obviously.
And yet no parade.
No parade.
Bye, Alyssa.
Bye.